Hello, my name is Kendra Vivar, and today I'm going to be going over some effective strategies and practices for dual language learners, or DLLs. I'll be talking about Spanish, the other languages spoken in the United States, some strategies and materials to use in the classroom, as well as a video from the experts at the end. So, other than English, Spanish is the highest spoken language in the United States. To give kind of an example of that, I'm going to show a little statistic that talks about the primary language use among Hispanics in the United States from 2011. And what this graph basically says is that first generation individuals will be mainly either Spanish dominant or bilingual. Second generation is about half and half. And third generation, it's about 70% English dominant, but still about 30% Spanish or bilingual dominant. So how this applies to being an early child education teacher is that even if we encounter even second or third generation students, that there is still a chance that they will be Spanish or bilingual dominant, or that their parents will be bilingual or Spanish dominant. Something to keep in mind when teaching the children, that even if they are second or third generation, they still might need that extra help with that language barrier. Something I found that was a little bit more local talked about the Tulsa area, talks about CAP Tulsa and their early childhood program, which CAP Tulsa is basically, it stands for Community Action Project, and it's a school for children ages 0 to 5. And what their statement says is that from their program, they serve about 2,300 children across the Tulsa area, and about 40% of those children are Hispanic. And at one of those locations, from the 220 at that one location, half of them are Hispanic. Something to keep in mind that in the Tulsa area, there will be students that you will encounter as a teacher that will speak Spanish, that will either be bilingual or that they will be Spanish dominant. And it's something to be aware of and to be prepared about. So, I'm guessing, unless you can speak Korean, you probably don't know what the line above says. And if it weren't for the bottom line, you probably wouldn't be able to sound it out either. Imagine that's what it feels like for a student from Korea to come over and see our language and not only not understand what it says or what we're saying, but not even be able to sound out the written language. If you're curious as to what it says, the line below says, "Do not assume that all dual language learners will speak Spanish," which is something very important to keep in mind when teaching. Because there are so many other languages other than Spanish around the world that can be spoken in the United States. So down here is a chart from the Census Bureau of 2015 in the United States of the different languages spoken in the United States by rank. Obviously, the top language is going to be Spanish or Spanish Creole at 40 million speakers. And it's kind of a large drop-off from the first and the second because Chinese is only 3 million, but that doesn't mean that you will not run into children who speak Chinese. Something to keep in mind is that, especially with Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, those are not Latin-based languages. With Spanish, at least they have the same alphabet or a similar alphabet and a similar way of pronouncing those letters. However, for the Asian languages and other languages around the world, it is a completely different type of writing style with completely different letters, where they might use characters instead of letters, and it's a completely different type of grammar and syntax that they might use. The way of speaking and thinking might be completely different. So something to keep in mind is that not all your children will speak Spanish. You may know a little bit of Spanish and might feel confident about working with DLLs, but you're not always going to get that. You're not always going to feel comfortable because you may not always know the language. You may not always know how to talk to them or their parents. And while Spanish is the most dominant language in the United States, you have to be prepared for anything and everything that comes your way. So here are a few strategies that I found to be pretty useful. I found most of these strategies from the book Many Languages, One Classroom. It is a great book, great tool to use for really any classroom that you're in. So the first strategy I wanted to talk about was to develop a welcome routine or a greeting. So basically, having a welcome routine really lets the child know that they are acknowledged. when a child is DLL, usually they have a hard time communicating and they can feel like they're kind of invisible, or they can feel a little bit left out because they can't communicate with anyone. They don't know how to communicate their needs or wants. So really letting them know that you care and that you know that they're there can go a long way. Also, a greeting, if you can find out how to say good morning, hello, just some key phrases in their native language, that can really help build a relationship with you and that child. The second one would be to use repetitive songs and rhymes during transition. For example, the cleanup song or open shut them song right before mealtime, which this strategy not only helps them build language, but it also signals a transition or a different activity that they're supposed to do. So that even children with a language barrier can understand that, oh, this song or this tune means, etc., Number 3 would be to use concrete materials to teach math concepts, and really any concept for that matter. I use math just as an example, so I could, show you a picture. Just that, when you're teaching math or maybe an abstract concept like math, it's important to understand that all children, not just dual language learners, understand that all children will need to use some sort of hands-on manipulatives or visual so that you can teach them these things, that they don't have to have that language barrier to understand this concept. So the fourth one, says sign language, gestures, and noises. So sign language can be great because a lot of the times DLLs can feel kind of embarrassed or shy about using their English because they don't want to get made fun of, that they sound funny or that they sound different. So sign language can be a way to let them express their language, because they do have language, it's just not English language. So sign language can help, gestures can help. As a teacher, demonstrating what needs to be done and demonstrating the rules can definitely help. And of course, noises, and what I mean by that are bells or whistles to indicate some sort of transition or activity. Basically nonverbal cues, so especially for those early DLLs, so that way they still know what's going on around the classroom, but they don't have the language barrier to stop them from knowing what's going on. So here I wrote down science, exploration, and teamwork. And the reason I use science as an example is because science encourages a lot of exploration and a lot of teamwork, a lot of group work in science. Usually it's a large group or a small group coming together to focus on how to solve a problem or how to get an answer to a certain question of the science topic. And promoting that group work and teamwork can really help those dual language learners, because they might be shy to enter into a group setting. So if you provide that group setting for them, it can help them learn how to communicate and observe children in a group setting and communicate their ideas. Finally, I would like to talk about the classroom setup. The way a teacher sets up her classroom or his classroom can have a great impact on students. This just for an example, something as simple as making a large space for your block area. That way you have enough room for children to engage in group work, but it also allows for a child to have their own space. They can participate in the block area, but they don't have to be in the group. Just providing large spaces and quiet spaces for them to recharge, or for them to step back a little bit and observe how group play is played out, can really help a child focus and learn the language, as well as different ways to enter into a group setting. So here are just some materials that you can use in your classroom to help the dual language learners. So first would be a visual schedule, visual calendar, as well as visual tasks. And what that does is for example right here, there's a student looking at a visual schedule. It is actual pictures, it is at eye level so that the student can always go up to it and see what is going to come next, and having actual pictures of their peers and themselves maybe doing the tasks so that they can understand what's going on. And as well, for visual tasks, having pictures of the rules can also help. Also, menus and other print in their native language can just bring a sense of familiarity and, let them engage in that dramatic play and actually know what's going on, rather than, looking at language and it's just being a bunch of gibberish. It's something familiar to them, something that they can associate with. Something else would be the Speak and Translate app. It's very helpful for real-time translations with not only the students, but as well as the parents. So being able to communicate almost immediately with your students is a great tool. Bilingual books are incredibly helpful, especially for those languages, like for this example is Farsi, the Farsi alphabet. Associating that these different characters associate with different English letters can be beneficial for the child, as well as anything in Spanish. Just being able to read in their native language is very useful. Bringing puppets or other manipulatives into literacy. Maybe if you're reading a story, let's say about ducks, you bring in actual pictures of actual ducks, or bring in maybe a fluffy or stuffed animal toy of ducks. Just letting them have a hands-on item so they can associate the word or concept with that item. Journaling is very important. Just allowing the child to express themselves using English, but not having to worry about getting it right or being embarrassed about speaking. Just letting them experiment and explore with English, and providing that really in any area of your classroom. And finally, just really make sure that you make the child feel included by maybe putting their face or their picture or their name everywhere, just to let them know that you know that they're there and that they're not invisible. So this is just a short video